What Chuck, you said you had a lot to narrow down from. So what's another one that you were thinking of?
Yeah, I got a few. Okay, next one, we're going to westerns,
Mm, okay.
Ooh.
and just a little preamble because I was doing a bunch of kind of looking around and studying today, and one movie I hadn't thought a lot of since last night as kind of a preamble because everybody used to talk about it, and everyone said like, well, the anti-hero kind of character really kind of came into his own with John Wayne and the Searchers. And I was like, well, I mean, I think if you kick around classic literature for a while, there was a guy named Oedipus who'd probably give you grief for such a suggestion.
Mhm. Yeah.
But but I just kind of rewatched little bits of the Searchers, and yeah, there is this whole thing of John Wayne because he's kind of a horrible character. I mean, in that movie, and very bigoted and kind of going after the Indians, and well, the movie's lexicon, not mine, but trying to save this the daughter of this family, and when he gets to her, it's years later, and of course she's become an adult and she's married into the tribe and everything, and he's just like, oh, we have to kill her now. We have to kill her
Mhm.
because she's damaged goods, and
Oh my
somehow
God.
Yeah.
somehow in the next 10 minutes of the movie or so, the climax hits and he does the right thing and saves her and says time
Mhm.
to go home. And I don't know. My problem with that movie is I don't know what the switch was to make that pivot. It's kind of like, wow, that's a hell of a
Yeah, I know. I know. I considered this character too. I was thinking about it. I have a
hell of a
theory.
whiplash.
Yeah, it's
But
my theory is that it's his daughter. There's a sort of a
Mm.
weirdness at the beginning when he comes into the family, the way the wife
with the
treats,
mother, yeah,
yeah, and
Hmm.
everything. You just feel like, hmm, I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe there's
That
something
makes
here,
sense.
but
that
it's
might
it's
be
a great
something.
movie. And oh my god, that last shot is just,
Yeah, and I will
yeah.
I will come back to that at some point, but that's just set up for the character that I wanted to pick, which is William Munny from Unforgiven.
Oh,
And this character, who it states right in the beginning, a little scroll telling you just this is a bad guy. This was a bad guy. He married this woman, and then she died of the flu or smallpox. But he goes about, he's when the movie picks up, he's this broken down pig farmer, and he's trying to raise his kids alone and make a go of it. And this character, the Schofield kid shows up, who's a self-proclaimed gunslinger, and he says, "Yeah, I was told I need to come get you because you were the badass of all badasses." And so they go on this whole bounty mission to avenge this prostitute who's been cut up
Mhm.
by a couple of cowboys. And a long story short, this and his friend Ned also comes along on this
Yeah.
journey.
Great
And
character.
yeah, great character. And but anyway, they go to this town. Long story short, they encounter Gene Hackman's character, Lil Bill, who's the sheriff of the town, and he's very much like almost like the frontier Daryl Gates. And he pretty much beats anyone down that he considers to be a lawbreaker or whatever, anyone who has a gun. It's kind of frontier gun control, I guess. But this guy is just really a vicious thug who became
Mhm.
sheriff. And finally, they he goes. Munny goes to this period where he gets beaten down and he's got the flu and he almost dies. Finally, he comes back. And the whole time, there's a struggle going throughout the movie with this guy to kind of get back to his bad side, because the whole thing, his wife reformed him and he doesn't do that kind of thing anymore. So finally, when it snaps is when Little Bill catches his friend Ned and tortures and kills him. And one of the prostitutes comes running over and gives them their bounty, their share of the dough. And he's telling the Schofield kid, we'll count this out and we'll give Ned his share. And she informs them Ned is dead and that he was tortured. And there's this one isolated moment in that scene where she says, he started telling us that you were William Munny out of Missouri and you dynamited this train, you killed all these women and children, and that you'd done worse than that. And at this point, you see the kid who's really doubted Munny this whole time look over and see him. And there's this slow motion shot where he's just tipping the bottle of whiskey back and the whiskey's rolling down his throat in slow motion. And it's like, it's the moment where the kid finally sees exactly how bad this guy is. This guy is not just a kick-ass gunslinger. This is a really bad guy. And he goes back into town. He gets his revenge on Ned and kills Little Bill and
a lot of other people.
Oh, and a lot of other people, and rides
all
off
deserving
in the rain. Yes, and the whole thing to me is like pretty much a deconstruction of the classic Western. I mean, it inverts everything, but this character, just where he's got Little Bill on the floor and has his gun to his head and says, "I'll see you in hell, William Munny," and he says, "Yeah." What else can he say? Blows him away. But just the struggle of this guy to get back to who he really is. And when he gets back to who he really is, whoa, Nelly. And I guess what, I don't know, like a friend once said that basically when you're dealing with the Unforgiven character, you have this theory that it was pretty much, this is how the man with no name ends up. From the Sergio Leone movies.
Yeah.
And probably not incorrect. But yeah, kind of a journey from trying to be good to being really, really, really bad.
Well, that's one of those movies where I the lesser evil thing comes in, because to be honest with you, the last like 30 minutes of the movie, I didn't see any anti. To me, he was the hero. They were all a town of scum fucks. I mean, it's just to be blunt about it, and there was a pleasure. Maybe I'm sick. I got out of him annihilating them, but you put that in relief against his past.
Yeah.
But
but that's why the thing is, like, when I see a movie like it with Tony Montana from Scarface and everything, for us, he's the anti-hero because we follow him. We know how he thinks. We see some of the mitigating circumstances and what made him this way. Yeah. All these nameless people who get blown away, they were kids once. They had trauma in their childhood. They might have had someone they loved. They were nice to their dog. They may have all these qualities, but because they just show up to get killed, we don't care.
What was their story?
Yeah, what was their story? I can't believe they woke up every day. What evil can I commit today? And yet, John Wick takes out 100 of them, and we're supposed to feel nothing. It's.
But I mean, they killed his dog. To be fair.
Well, the one guy killed his dog, and he richly deserved
John Wick
everything.
Did nothing wrong in his entire life.
But a lot of these guys just like, hey, listen, will you just guard this door and make sure no one comes through? Yeah, sure. I mean, that seems like a good job. Pop, headshot. He's gone.
That's a job.
Their mistake was that they had what most people institutionalized murderers do. They just following orders.
Yeah.
Right.
So. In other words, they probably did have these nice lives, in some level of happiness with a wife and kid, or what husband and kid.
Henry,
but they decided to join this group.
But did everyone on the Death Star know that it was going to be used for evil? Okay, yeah, it's called the Death Star. Bad example. Never mind. Go on. That should have been a clue.
Only Kevin Smith could probably answer that one. Before I give Kaylin the stage again, I want to do one. I'm going to try to be brief, but it's I'd say it's somewhat different than the other ones we've talked about. So there is a film called The Spook Who Sat by the Door, and this came out in 71, 72. So it was right at the birth of the blaxploitation era, so it got marketed that way, and understandably. But it had been based on a novel by I think his name's Ed Greenlee, and he was a black writer, and he had researched insurgencies and counter-revolutions all through history, and Franz Fanon, and he knew all about the CIA and all this other stuff. So he posits this idea, what if you get there's affirmative action is starting. So the CIA has to have at least one black employee. So I mean, it's so absurd in the beginning that it is like comical almost, but it's also how things really were back then. And there's like a black secretary, and even she's like, oh, do you want to hire the Negro? And I'm like, oh God. And so his first job is a copy machine clerk. He's just in charge of it. And the whole time he's all jolly and happy. And so there's some black guys who want to kind of, rise in this organization, become part of it, become affiliated with it, and get out of their, past station in life. And they have kind of a chip on their shoulder. And they don't like the fact that the massa loves this guy. By the way, his main character's name Dan Freeman, and Freeman, of course, is not an accident. But Dan, so they confront Dan, and then that's when you see the worm turn first, because I think Lawrence Cook's performance is just total mastery of acting, and you see him just turn, and all of a sudden he's like, you bring it on. I'm paraphrasing, but he tells these guys basically, like, they're in his dorm or whatever kind of room. There's like 3 or 4 of them. And he basically says, I'll take all of you on right now. If you've got a problem, I can solve it, and then he also rubs it into their face that, where do you really think you're going to get with this with this attitude you have? How's it any better than mine? They don't care about you either, really. And he has a prostitute that he confides in. And another very prescient scene that I had not seen in a movie of that vintage, but of course it's extremely popular cultural thing for the last 2 generations. But he tells her, he says, you look like a queen I saw in a book as a child, a queen of Egypt. And she's like, you're lying, you're putting me down. He's like, no, I mean it. And he does mean it. And slowly you start to see this kind of thing fall into place as he learns every skill the CIA has. He learns martial arts, he learns, weapons, he learns all those other stuff I mentioned, how to take down governments, and how to create movements, and how to mobilize. And so that's what he begins doing. And he quits the CIA, very amicably, very quietly. And he has a girlfriend who's kind of a part of the system. She's kind of like a sellout, kind of chick, and thinks he's, they think he was radical when he started college, and now he's got sense. And his other friend is named Dawes, and he's a cop. And Dawes is the same way. Dawes and him were talking about radical shit, when they started in college, and now look 10 years later, and Dawes is part of the system. And Dan basically tells him, he's like, you can't be a cop and be black. That's no. And the certitude that he says it with, if I didn't already think that, no offense to anybody who thinks otherwise, I do think that. But if I didn't think that before that, I've thought it after he said it. It was like, he's like, they're killing our people, and he's like, you're starting to sound like you were in college. And that's his first slip up. Because he's had his 2 lives perfectly compartmentalized. Now the other life, he's got all these people, like he's even got like light-skinned black people who will pass as white to do like robberies of banks. And they never kill anybody, but they they're prepared to, but they rob a lot of money. and they start getting chapters all through the country. So the story becomes I don't want to, I guess you would call it an apocalyptic, not a post-apocalyptic, but I would call it an apocalyptic science fiction film because it shows, the United States. What if this really happened and it worked? Like, what if the things that they wanted to do in the 70s and the 60s actually had worked? And so, but they bring you right to the edge of it. You don't see the post-apocalypse. You don't know if their lives are better or not, but the message you get is very chilling because Dawes confronts him, and he wanted to convert him, like be like, "Hey man, be my man on the police force," and he's like, "No," and they struggle over a gun, and Dan gets shot, but he's alive, and but Dawes is dead, and one of his dudes come in to take care of his body, and he's like, "Damn, Dan, that's some cold-blooded shit, man. Dawes was your boy, and he's like, "You've got to be prepared to do anything it takes for our race to have freedom. There will be a lot of Dawes, and you better be ready to pull that trigger, no matter how much it hurts." And they take the body away, and he looks out the window, and of course, you're thinking, is he going to get medical help? Is anybody else on to him? But what he does is he sees the city in flames from the window, and he holds up his glass as like a cheers. And it's like, I love this character so much. I mean, he strongly influenced one of my major characters named Ellinger that I've been writing on for several years, and because I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way, but I've got other strands in that story, but he's an indelible character because he is an anti-hero. I mean, he really, if you look at his view from one point of view, he's absolutely a hero, but on the other hand, he's okay with collateral damage. He is the by any means necessary, except unlike Malcolm X, we actually see evidence of some of his people killing people or having to shoot cops, and they don't go on mass skirmishes of violence though. Really, their stuff is subversion, and when it starts to work, and he gets on the radio and calls himself Uncle Tom. And he has this untraceable underground radio. I mean, he's making fun of people making fun of black people, but he's like, "This is Uncle Tom. It is time to mobilize on this date. Be ready, everyone." And Dawes, his friend, starts to recognize his voice. That's another reason that he suspected him. So, he wasn't, his plan didn't go perfectly, but it makes you wonder what if, and what good and bad would come of such a thing, and if it were possible. And the author, of course, he wasn't a Black Panther, but of course he was sympathetic with them, and yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. I mean, to me, he's a great anti-hero. I mean, because he is kind of like they try to make Magneto sometimes in the X-Men, and rarely succeed, but when they do succeed, it's pretty cool.
I love Magneto as an anti-hero or as an anti-villain.
Yes, absolutely. And but anyway, that's one of mine. What else you got for us, Kaylin?
I just want to comment on yours real quick. Like I haven't seen that one, but that sounds really interesting, and I'm gonna have to check it out now because you stepped on one of my interests, which is all of the crazy shit that the CIA did in the 60s and 70s. My God, like,
well, the thing is, they're still doing it.
Oh,
yeah, it hasn't stopped.
They're doing it now. Yeah. I keep up with this
totally.
shit pretty religiously. They're doing it every day.
Oh no, they are.
But you're right. Yes,
I don't want to give the impression that it stopped after the 70s.
No, but that era,
period that I personally have
has its own flavor.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah, it was absolutely bananas. So like at the same time that this character would have been like working in the CIA and like doing all of this stuff, the CIA would have also been having all of these really intense, like if y'all know COINTELPRO, basically the CIA gathering intel on US citizens, including Black Panthers, including anybody talking about Black liberation, period, and a whole bunch of other social movement groups that were going on at the time. It is really, really interesting stuff. So it's like you've got this character working in the organization that's doing this. Just sounds really compelling story-wise.
He's a very subversive character, and it's really kind of like he was literally subversive. He was part of the system.
Mhm.
And so he didn't get up and give speeches like MLK or Malcolm X. He's like, I'm gonna be pretend to be part of the engine, and then I'm gonna fucking wreck the fucking car,
Yeah.
and then I'm
Like,
taking
I want to
over,
see this now.
build
That
a new
sounds
one.
really cool.
And of course, when I tell black people that I'm not sure, don't know that well, but who are into cool movies, and I want to tell them about a movie like this, there's this white guilt thing that I do have for a second. I have to go, the spook is sat by the door, and then he'll have to immediately say, yeah, it's this black guy joins the CIA so he can overthrow their government. And that way they won't be offended by the word spook, because obviously the author of the book deliberately is
Sure.
riffing on that as a
Right.
racial epithet. But a spook is also a spy, so
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
perfect. So
You know,
anyway,
it's funny.
Yeah.
We talk about how the CIA had to, was gathering all this information. Now, of course, we give it away freely. Nothing cracks me up more. I'm on Facebook and someone's like, if so and so gets elected, if this happens, I'm going to be
I'm
part of the
gonna do
resistance.
this.
I'm
It's
going to
like-
do this. And I'm like, boy, I sure hope they don't catch you.
I know,
Now,
man.
things the
That they
French
know it now.
resistance never did.
Yeah.
If you were in the French resistance, you did not write a letter to La Pia, whatever the local newspaper is, talking about how you're going to blow up bridges.
No.
It's not a good move. Idiots.
Well, that's because they're not real subversives. They're just people
No,
venting
they're
their
not.
No, they're
frustration.
like, yeah, they're
Like,
gonna be.
the
I'm
actual
gonna write. I'm gonna
are
make some
typing
angry
about
tweets.
it on Facebook
Yeah.
and Twitter. They're using more like out of the stuff decentralized communication methods
Yeah.
because they're not
Right.
stupid. But yeah, no, the people who just like go talk about all this openly on social media, I'm just like, I really hope you don't go do that. I'd like you to not go
No.
do that, but also
Yeah.
thanks for leaving a paper trail.
Yeah, not too worried about it. No, the
I
ones
mean,
you got to
they're
worry about. The ones you got to worry about, the ones who used to post a lot of political stuff, and they've gone radio silent. They just post
I
cat,
know.
just
Because-
post
Yeah.
cat pictures now. They're making
Well,
lists.
there's a reason for that, but
Yeah, that's
we
right.
can get into all that. But
Yeah,
but
that's a whole thing.
that's a whole nother thing. That's why I don't have dental insurance. One reason.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. That's how when I start to follow politics, when it directly impacts your life,
Mm.
then yeah, I want to know what's going on. But
Fair enough.
what's another one of your movies?
Sure. So the second one I want to talk about, I think I'll go ahead and go to, I have three, so I got two more.
Okay.
One of them that I wanted to talk about is, since anti-heroines have come up a little bit, this is something that I really am passionate about because there's a lot of talk about anti-heroes as like guy characters. People think of like this
Mhm.
grizzly, like roughly middle-aged dude who has a bad attitude and all of this stuff. And it's just like, okay, well, come on. There's really good anti-heroines too, and also people like of all ages and stuff.
Mhm.
So one that I want to talk about is Rosario Tijeras. And this is a Colombian film from 2005. It's based on a novel by the same title by Jorge Franco. And so Rosario Tijeras is this beautiful, beautiful, drop-dead gorgeous young woman. I'm hearing like an echo or something. Oh, well, I'll just keep talking.
Okay,
I heard
you're coming
something
through
too.
clear. Yeah.
Cool, as long as it's clear. Anyway, so Rosario Tijeras is this young woman. She's absolutely stunning. And that's one of the things that makes her so good at her job as a hitman. So she works for this gang in Medellin, in Colombia. It's the subculture. There's these motorcycle riding hitmen. And she is extremely good at her job as a hitman. She basically, by being gorgeous, seduces men that she is supposed to take out, and she'll kiss them and then shoot them and kill them. And as you find out, as the story goes on, she was molested and raped as a child. So that gets into the whole like revenge, rape revenge cycle type of thing. It's just a little bit delayed and like extended in this. It's not, I wouldn't quite call it like a rape revenge like film, but it's the sexual trauma that she had as a child that then leads her into the subculture, leads her into the job that she ends up doing, and just a lot of self-destructive behavior that she ends up getting into. She gets very into drug use, and all of the killing and everything. But the moment of this film that I knew I was just going to absolutely love it, and this is in the trailer, if you look up the trailer, is you see her standing over a man, and she's talking to him, and she says respeto, respect, and like one gunshot per syllable, and it's just oh buddy, like there's this whole thing about her being like, no man can own me, you know, I'm my own person, I'm empowered and all of this, but also you realize that she's not a healthy person by any stretch of the imagination. So I find her really interesting as a character for that reason, and I see her as an anti-heroine because she definitely has a very sympathetic backstory. You get why she's like this, you root for her, you want her to be okay, you know. Anybody who's been through any kind of trauma like that can probably understand on some level her desire to just use and kill men. Get it?
Sure.
I understand. But you know, by the end of the film, she also ends up getting shot. She goes to the emergency room. She's relating her story to this guy who has fallen for her, and through whose eyes we kind of see her story. So she's kind of the anti-heroine of the story. It's not technically from her perspective, but it's kind of like in The Great Gatsby. Gatsby is really like the hero of the story, even though it's not through his eyes. It's kind of that type of story.
Nick Carraway.
Yeah, so it's really good. If you just want like a lot of absolutely glorious kind of pulpy killing stuff in a film, it's a great one. Yeah, very
That's awesome.
Yeah, just it's what it is on the tin, very much, but it's really compelling. And the acting is phenomenal. I've heard, you know,
I had never heard of it
from Colombians that it's very accurate portrayal of that subculture. A lot of people, of course, say the book is better. I haven't read it yet. I really need to. There's also been a TV series spinoff of this that has happened since the movie came out. Yeah, so it's this whole
very
thing.
Cool.
It's really cool.
Thank you.